I should have known something was wrong when the invitation came late. Thanksgiving had always been a tradition in my family. When my husband Henry was still alive, we hosted every year, cooking for days, setting up extra tables, and making sure everyone had a warm place to celebrate. But since his passing 5 years ago, I had passed the hosting duties to my son, Daniel, and his wife, Olivia. Daniel was my only child, the light of my life. I had raised him alone after Henry's sudden heart attack, working double shifts at a local diner to put food on the table. It wasn't easy, but he grew up knowing the value of hard work, or at least I thought he did. After he married Olivia, things changed. She was a woman who had grown up with money, and she never let anyone forget it. From the moment I met her, I could tell she found me lacking. She rarely visited, and when she did, she would wrinkle her nose at my small house, my thrift store furniture, my home-cooked meals. She never said anything outright, but her tight-lipped smile and overly polite tone told me everything I needed to know. I never let it bother me. Daniel loved her, and that was enough for me. But this year, Thanksgiving felt different. The invitation came a week later than usual. A simple text from Daniel. Mom, Thanksgiving at our place. Bring something if you want. No warmth, no excitement, just a casual afterthought. I swallowed my pride and decided to contribute the one thing I knew best, my homemade sweet potato casserole, the same one Henry used to love. I made it every year, and it had always been a favorite. On Thanksgiving morning, I arrived at their home, balancing the warm casserole dish in my hands. Their house was beautiful, sleek, modern, and filled with expensive furniture that looked like no one had ever actually sat on it. The kind of house that felt more like a showroom than a home. As soon as I stepped inside, Olivia's voice rang out. Oh, you brought something. She was standing near the dining table, dressed in an outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her perfect eyebrows lifted as she eyed the foil-covered dish in my hands. I smiled. I made my sweet potato casserole, just like every year. Her lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. How nice! I ignored the look she gave one of her friends, a woman who stood beside her clutching a glass of expensive wine. The two exchanged a glance, and I felt heat rise to my cheeks. I knew that look, but I pushed it aside and made my way to the kitchen, where Daniel was setting the table. He gave me a quick side hug before moving to adjust the expensive centerpiece, a golden arrangement that looked too fragile to touch. Mom, glad you made it, he said, barely looking up. It wasn't much, but I clung to it anyway. Dinner was served an hour later. The long table was filled with expensive dishes, truffle mashed potatoes, rosemary-infused turkey, cranberry sauce that looked like it had never seen the inside of a can. Olivia's friends, wealthy couples I barely knew, gushed over the food, commenting on the artisanal ingredients, the curated wine selection. And then it happened. One of Olivia's friends, a blonde woman in designer clothes, gestured toward my casserole. And what's this? She asked, her tone dripping with curiosity. Olivia's laugh was light but sharp. Oh, that? It's just something my mother-in-law brought, a little homemade dish. Her emphasis on homemade made it sound like a slur. The blonde woman blinked, then smiled thinly. Oh, how quaint. And just like that, laughter rippled around the table. I sat there, gripping my fork, my face burning. Daniel didn't say anything. He just looked away. That was when I realized something painful. He wasn't just ignoring it. He was letting it happen. And I had never felt more alone. But they had no idea what was coming. I sat there, gripping my fork, my face burning as laughter danced around the table like clinking champagne glasses. Olivia's friends exchanged smirks, and even she, my own daughter-in-law, didn't bother to hide her amusement. And Daniel, my Daniels, did nothing. He didn't defend me. He didn't correct them. He just kept his eyes down, cutting into his turkey as if he hadn't heard a thing. The betrayal was a sharp sting, but I had learned long ago how to swallow pain without choking. I forced a tight-lipped smile. Well, I said, keeping my voice even, it may not be as fancy as the rest, but Henry always loved my sweet potato casserole. It was his favorite part of Thanksgiving. There. Let's see them mock a dead man's favorite dish. For a second, the table fell silent. Then Olivia waved a dismissive hand. Oh, that's sweet, she said, her tone anything but. But you know, times change. People's tastes evolve. Her friend, the blonde woman in Too Many Diamonds, chimed in. That's true. I mean, homemade food is fine for simpler times. I felt my stomach twist. I had spent years serving food to strangers, smiling through long hours at the diner just to make ends meet. I had worked my fingers raw so my son could have a good life. And now here I was, being told my food wasn't good enough by women who probably couldn't tell a rolling pin from a curling iron. I took a slow breath, pushing down the hurt. But the worst part, no one touched my dish. It sat there, untouched, growing colder by the second as they all indulged in their overpriced gourmet feast. And then the conversation took a turn. You know, one of Olivia's friends said, leaning forward, this meal is exquisite. Olivia, how did you manage it all? Olivia beamed. Oh, well, Daniel and I put so much effort into making sure we had the best of everything. We only went to the finest caterers. No offense, of course. She shot me a glance, her eyes dancing with amusement. But sometimes quality just matters more. Another round of knowing laughter. I clenched my jaw. And then one of Olivia's friends turned to me with a syrupy smile. So, dear, what do you do for the holidays? You know, normally. Something in her tone made my blood simmer. She was pretending to be polite, but I could hear the undertone. Someone like you, a widow in her 60s, still living in a modest little house, surely doesn't celebrate the way we do. I met her gaze head on. Well, I said, my voice calm, when Henry was alive, we always hosted. He loved Thanksgiving, said it was the one time of year where food wasn't just food, it was family. I let my words settle, watching as their expressions flickered with something unreadable. Then Olivia let out a small, amused hum. Well, we certainly spared no expense this year, she said, nudging Daniel playfully. This feast was not cheap, let me tell you. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? Olivia's friend, the blonde with too much wine in her glass, let out a dramatic sigh. No kidding. I mean, everything is artisanal, organic, free-range, hand-picked, whatever else rich people care about. Olivia giggled. It's true, but hey, you get what you pay for, right? And that was when I decided I'd had enough. I leaned back, folded my hands in my lap, and smiled. Oh, absolutely, I said. And I should know. Olivia blinked. What? I tilted my head. Well, dear, I paid for it. Silence. Complete, deafening silence. Someone's fork clattered onto their plate. One of Olivia's friends blinked in confusion, and even Daniel's hand froze midair. Olivia's smile wavered. What? What do you mean? I kept my expression calm, my heart thudding in satisfaction. Oh, sweetheart, I said sweetly, did Daniel not tell you? He's been having financial troubles lately. The house, the bills, this lavish Thanksgiving dinner. He didn't pay for it. I did. Olivia's face turned pale. I turned to my son. Isn't that right, Daniel? He looked like a deer caught in headlights. I had known for months. Daniel had been struggling, layoffs at work, bills piling up, and I had been helping behind the scenes. I had sent money, covered expenses, even paid for this ridiculous dinner. He had begged me not to tell Olivia, ashamed of their financial problems, and I had agreed, until now. Until she humiliated me, until she made it clear that I was nothing more than an embarrassment to her perfect world. I watched as the color drained from Olivia's face. She swallowed, forcing a laugh. That's ridiculous. I shrugged. Is it? Daniel still hadn't spoken. He was staring at his plate, as if hoping it would swallow him whole. And then one of Olivia's friends leaned forward. Wait, she said slowly, eyes narrowing. Are you saying Olivia didn't pay for this? More silence. Then a whisper. Oh my God. And just like that, the night took a very different turn. I picked up my fork. Suddenly, my sweet potato casserole didn't seem so cheap anymore. Silence clung to the dining room like a thick fog. The golden candlelight flickered, reflecting off the polished silverware, but no one moved. The lively, smug conversation that had filled the air moments ago had been replaced with stunned disbelief. Olivia was the first to speak, though her voice was tight, forced. That's not true, she said, shaking her head. Daniel and I didn't let her finish. Oh, sweetheart, I said, my voice as warm as the cinnamon in my casserole. Why don't you ask your husband? All eyes turned to Daniel. He sat frozen, shoulders hunched, his face a mask of shame. The napkin in his lap was crumpled in his fist, and his breathing had turned shallow. He didn't look at Olivia. He didn't look at me. He just stared at his plate, as if he could will himself out of this moment. Olivia's fingers curled around her wineglass. Daniel? Her voice was sharp now, cutting through the quiet. Tell her she's wrong. Daniel swallowed hard. I could see it in his eyes, the war inside him, the desperate need to keep up appearances, to hold on to the illusion he had built for Olivia and her friends. But the truth was a persistent thing. And the truth was that my son had been drowning financially for months. A layoff, a mortgage teetering on the edge, credit cards stretched too thin, and his wife, the same woman who had just mocked me, had no idea. I had been the one quietly holding him above water. I had been the one sending money, making sure he and Olivia could keep up their expensive lifestyle, their image of success. And now Olivia was about to find out the cost of that illusion. Daniel exhaled shakily. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, "Mom's telling the truth." The room tilted. At least, that's how it felt. Olivia's lips parted, her expression almost comical in its disbelief. Her friends exchanged wide-eyed glances. The blonde woman, the one who had made that snide comment about simple food, suddenly looked extremely uncomfortable. I took another bite of my casserole, letting the revelation settle over the table. Olivia set her glass down. Too hard. The sharp clink made Daniel flinch. What do you mean? She's telling the truth? Olivia's voice was trembling now. You said you handled everything, that we could afford this. Daniel finally met her eyes, and what I saw there made my heart ache. He looked like a little boy caught in a lie. Liv? He ran a hand through his hair. I didn't want to stress you out. I thought I could fix things before you found out. Olivia let out a hollow laugh. Before I found out? Daniel, do you have any idea how this makes me look? I raised an eyebrow. How it makes her look? Ah, so that was her concern. Not the fact that her husband had been struggling. Not the fact that his mother, had been quietly supporting them. No, she was worried about appearances. Typical. One of Olivia's friends cleared her throat. So wait, if your mother-in-law paid for all of this, does that mean? She trailed off, her gaze darting to the extravagant table spread. The message was clear. Olivia hadn't paid for this, which meant Olivia wasn't nearly as wealthy as she wanted everyone to believe. Her entire image, her curated social circle, her high society attitude was built on a lie. And I had just exposed it. Olivia turned to Daniel, eyes flashing. So what? Were you just going to keep lying to me? Daniel's jaw tightened. I wasn't lying. I was trying to fix it before. Before I embarrassed myself? Olivia hissed. I sighed, setting down my fork. You know, dear, it's funny. Her head snapped toward me. What? I gestured around the table. All night, you and your friends have been talking about quality, how the price of something determines its worth, how my casserole, I gave a wry smile, wasn't good enough for this table. Olivia's cheeks burned. I leaned forward. And yet I paid for all of this. I gestured at the turkey, the imported side dishes, the crystal glasses filled with fine wine. Does that make it cheap now? Silence. Olivia opened her mouth, then closed it. Her friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats, clearly eager to be anywhere but here. Daniel looked down, ashamed. I gave a small, satisfied nod. Because the truth was, Olivia had made it clear that she valued things more than people. She had belittled me for bringing something homemade, something that carried meaning, because it wasn't expensive enough. And yet, in the end, money had come from me, not from Daniel, not from her, from the very person she had mocked. I pushed back my chair. "Well," I said, smoothing my napkin and setting it beside my plate, "I think I've lost my appetite." I stood, feeling lighter than I had in years. I had spent so long holding my tongue, trying to keep the peace, trying to help without making waves. But I had learned something tonight. Some people don't deserve quiet grace. Some people need to be humbled. And Olivia, she had just learned what humility tasted like, and by the look on her face, I'd say it was bitter. I stood at the door, my hand resting lightly on the handle as I turned back to the table. The sound of Olivia's breath catching in her throat was the only noise in the room. I could feel her gaze, heavy and burning, digging into my back, but I didn't look at her. Not now. Not when I had finally reclaimed my peace. Daniel hadn't said a word, but I knew he was torn. Torn between his loyalty to the woman he had married and the woman who had always been there for him. His mother, the one who had been fighting for his future since the day he was born. I paused for just a moment longer, savoring the quiet, and then as I turned the handle and stepped out of the dining room, I heard her voice, desperate, pleading. "Mom, wait!" I stopped, the weight of her words heavy on my chest. I wasn't sure if I should turn around, if I even wanted to, but there was something in her voice that made me hesitate. "Please," Olivia said, her tone softening. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't know you were helping us." Her words trailed off into a sigh. "It's just, with everything going on, I've been so focused on appearances. She paused, her voice trembling. "I didn't realize how much you've been doing for us." I turned slowly, but my expression was guarded. "You didn't realize?" I asked, my voice calm but edged with a sharpness I didn't want to hide. "How could you not realize, Olivia? It's been going on for months. You've been living in a fantasy world, and I've been here, quietly cleaning up the mess." Olivia's eyes flickered with guilt, but there was something else there too, a flicker of understanding. I could see it in the way she held my gaze now, no longer dismissive or superior. She was beginning to see me, not as an obstacle to her perfect life, but as someone who had been sacrificing for her family's sake. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said softly. "I just wanted everything to be perfect. You know how I get when things aren't, right?" She took a deep breath, her fingers nervously fiddling with her wineglass. "I was wrong. I should have never said what I did about your food. It wasn't cheap. It was made with love, and I should have respected that." I took a deep breath, the knot in my chest finally loosening. I didn't want to hold on to the anger, but I needed her to understand, truly understand, the weight of her actions. "You mocked me, Olivia, and you mocked my family. And for what? To keep up appearances?" I shook my head. "That's what this has always been about for you, hasn't it? Keeping up the image of a perfect life without ever considering the people who've supported you through it all." She stood there, silent, her eyes glistening with a mixture of shame and regret. Daniel was behind her now, his voice low and apologetic. "Mom, I'm sorry too. I should have told her. I should have been honest." His eyes met mine, and for the first time in ages, I saw a flicker of the sun I had raised. "I didn't want to worry you. I didn't want to disappoint you, but I see now how wrong that was." I looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time in years, I saw him not as the boy who needed saving, but as the man who needed to take responsibility. I wasn't angry anymore. Not with him. Not with Olivia. I had raised Daniel to be a good man, a man who could make his own decisions, a man who, even when he faltered, could learn from his mistakes. "Thank you," I said softly. "Thank you for apologizing." Olivia bit her lip, glancing at Daniel, then back at me. She took a deep breath. "I really am sorry, Sarah. I don't know what to say." I could see it now, really see it. The pressure she was under to be perfect, to keep up with the lifestyle Daniel and I had worked so hard to give her. The shiny, glittering world she'd been so eager to be a part of, no matter the cost. "Olivia," I said, stepping forward, my voice low but firm, "the thing about perfect lives is that they're fake. You don't have to keep up with anyone. Not with me, not with anyone." I took a deep breath, meeting her eyes directly. "You don't have to prove anything. You just have to be real." She nodded, wiping her eyes quickly as a tear slid down her cheek. "I'll try, I promise. I'll do better." I nodded. Then I looked over at Daniel, who was watching me with something almost like awe in his eyes. "You've already done enough," I said quietly. There was a long, tender silence between us before I turned and walked back into the dining room, the smell of the food still hanging in the air. When I sat back down, the tension in the room was palpable, but it was a different kind of tension now. It wasn't the stifling, judgmental silence of before. It was something softer, a chance for reconciliation, a chance to rebuild the cracks that had formed in our family's foundation. For the first time that night, Olivia picked up a spoon and served herself a helping of my casserole. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. But the look in her eyes, regret, yes, but also something else, told me that she understood. I looked at Daniel. "This meal," I said softly, "it's what we've always had. It's family." And for the first time in a long while, I could see us rebuilding, not the picture-perfect version of what we had been, but something more real, something rooted in truth, in forgiveness, and in love. It was messy. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and that was enough.